The girlfriend pushed me into her best friend's room. 2 years ago, my girlfriend suddenly brought a woman back. This woman was extremely beautiful, with fair skin, an alluring figure, and long, slender legs. She resembled my girlfriend a lot. If you only looked at their faces, they were practically identical. When I first met them, I joked that they might be sisters. After I said that, my girlfriend seriously considered taking her friend for a DNA test. In the end, her friend refused, but my girlfriend didn't bring up the reason. The woman's name is Dongjuchi, and she is a new colleague at my girlfriend's company. When they first met, they were immediately attracted to each other and quickly became inseparable best friends. The first time Dongjuchi visited our home, my girlfriend wanted to send me to the guest room to sleep. I obviously wasn't happy about it and didn't want to set a precedent, or I'd be stuck alone in the guest room all the time. So, I vented my frustration on the remote control, and the air conditioner stopped working. The weather was too hot to sleep, so I had no choice but to discuss it with my girlfriend. Luckily, she was understanding and agreed I could sleep on the floor in our room. When she agreed, I glanced over at her best friend. Dongjuchi initially frowned, but in the end, didn't say anything. Although my girlfriend and her best friend had only known each other for a short time, their bond was already very strong, as if they were kindred spirits. That night, they chatted so happily, starting from childhood memories and going on to food, shopping, swimming, basically everything. I listened for about half an hour, then gradually fell asleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up to find they were still chatting. This time, the topic was men. Chichi, what kind of man do you like? Want me to introduce one to you? I like mature, steady men because I've always lacked a sense of security. These kinds of men have rich life experiences and careers, and they can help me solve life's problems. They also need to be humorous, so life isn't so boring, with endless surprises even in simple moments. And of course, they should be handsome. I had a feeling the man she was describing was me. Of course, most men would feel that way in front of a beautiful woman. That night, they chatted until it was nearly dawn before they went to sleep. The next morning, when I woke up, I saw the two women. Surprisingly, they were hugging each other. The scene was hard to watch. Dongjuchi lived not far from our house, and my girlfriend often went over to stay the night. I once suspected that her friend was secretly helping her arrange dates with her first love. I followed her a few times, but every time, I ended up freezing outside all night, only to realize I'd been overthinking. After she met her best friend, my girlfriend's mood improved, and we argued less often. Our home also became a lot livelier with her friend around, and life seemed more enjoyable. Before I knew it, over a year had passed. I started to notice my girlfriend's best friend changing her fashion style. Her clothes became more revealing, and she even wore a milk-white yoga outfit in front of me. That night, because of an accident, I ended up staying at her house instead of going home. Dongjuchi's figure could easily outshine 99% of women, but sadly, she was too conservative and wasted the advantage that nature gave her. One day, my girlfriend bought a camisole dress, but it was too small for her. She didn't feel like exchanging it, so she gave it to her best friend. When Dongjuchi put it on, her entire aura became more elegant. Her fair and delicate skin, pretty face, and curvaceous figure, she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. No contest. After that day, her best friend started wearing more revealing clothes that showed off her stunning figure. I'm a normal man, and when faced with a beautiful woman, especially one dressed in such revealing clothing, I couldn't help but admire her. In the past, whenever I'd look at a woman too long, my girlfriend would scold me for it. But with her best friend, I couldn't figure out why my girlfriend was suddenly so generous. Not only did she not object, but she'd often ask me which clothes her best friend looked better in and which pants would match better. The most absurd thing was when my girlfriend asked me to accompany her best friend to pick out a swimsuit. That Thursday night, my girlfriend spontaneously decided to go to the beach. She planned to buy a beautiful swimsuit the next day, but that evening, she suddenly had to work overtime and asked me to accompany her best friend shopping. So after dinner, I had to drive Dongjuchi around for shopping. We went to the pedestrian street at 7 p.m. and shopped until 9:30, but she still hadn't found anything she liked. She tried on outfit after outfit, but none of them worked. As the store was about to close, I urged her to hurry up. Finally, she asked me which swimsuit looked better. Without thinking, I picked a yellow bikini and handed it to her. As soon as I handed it over, I regretted it. The bikini was just too sexy. But Dongjuchi took the bikini and went straight into the fitting room. I stood outside, already fantasizing about what it would look like when she wore that swimsuit. 10 minutes later, she came out but not wearing the bikini. In the end, she still bought the yellow bikini. On Saturday, my girlfriend, her best friend, and I went on a beach trip. Dongjuchi didn't wear the yellow bikini, which was a little disappointing, but the swimsuit dress she wore was also stunning. That night, despite my objections, my girlfriend went to her best friend's room to sleep early. My half-year-long plan to spend time alone with her was dashed. My girlfriend really treats her best friend so well, in fact, that even as her husband, I feel jealous. If it weren't for my girlfriend's normal sexual orientation, I would have suspected those two were having an affair. About half a month after our beach trip, it was already past 10 p.m. when Dongjuchi called, saying her water heater was broken. Without saying much, my girlfriend told me to go over and help her. At that moment, I had just laid down, holding my girlfriend in my arms, and the atmosphere was already set. It was just about to get to the point. I really didn't want to go. Even if I had to, I needed at least an hour. But my girlfriend wouldn't let go of my collar and even threatened me. I had no choice but to give in, but in my mind, I cursed that woman 100 times. If she weren't my girlfriend's best friend, I could guarantee that her water heater would be broken every day. When I arrived at Dongjuchi's place, I saw her wearing a creamy white yoga outfit, tight-fitting to the point that it was almost impossible to look at directly. I remembered the phone call from her, forcing me to leave the warmth of my bed and my girlfriend's tenderness. I couldn't help but look at her body, taking in her beauty for the first time from up close. I have to admit, this woman is really stunning. Her curvaceous lines radiate charm. Her face started to turn red, even her neck flushed a bit. A woman who could make any man blush just by looking at her. Honestly, I don't understand where she got the courage to wear such clothes. She wasn't even afraid that I might take advantage of her. I don't know if she was afraid, but I definitely wasn't going to do anything because I have a beautiful wife at home. Not wanting things to get awkward, I averted my gaze and walked into the bathroom. In the bathroom, there were clothes she had just changed out of, and the size and patterns were enough to make any man think too much. The shower head had clearly been used for a long time, and rust had accumulated, causing a blockage. I turned off the main switch, unscrewed the shower head's faucet, and used a screwdriver to clear it out until the water started flowing again. Just as I was tightening the faucet after fixing it, the woman suddenly turned on the main switch, and water started spraying everywhere. Neither of us had avoided it in time, and soon our clothes were drenched. It wasn't a big deal for me, but my girlfriend's best friend was in a worse situation. Her yoga outfit was already tight, and once it got wet, it clung to her body. I quickly closed my eyes, but I heard her scream. I hurriedly opened my eyes and looked at Dongjuchi to see what had happened. It turned out that she had crouched down when she turned on the switch, and after getting soaked, she tried to stand up but couldn't stabilize herself on the slippery floor. Seeing her about to fall into my arms, my instinct was to catch her. I did catch her, but she ended up pushing me to the ground. I was lying there, with her body on top of mine, in a somewhat awkward position. But I'll admit, this woman's figure was impressive, firm and curvy, the kind of physique you only see in women from the countryside, with muscles that were a stark contrast to those of city girls. She didn't seem to have hurt her foot, but she stayed on top of me for a good 20 seconds without getting up. I wanted to help her up, but my hands were pinned under her body. It was too late. Just as I reached out, she fell into my arms. Beautiful women are like poison. Any close contact triggers a man's instinctive reaction, and it can get dangerous. My hands were starting to cramp from being pressed under her, and if this continued, I would definitely lose my composure. I gently pushed her off me, moving her away. Dongjuchi was quite tall, about 168 centimeters, slim and tall, but pushing her was harder than I expected. She let out a loud scream when I finally managed to move her. She quickly scrambled off me and stood there, seemingly lost in thought. After getting up, we were standing so close, just a foot away from each other. Suddenly, she burst into tears and ran out of the bathroom without looking back. "I'm sorry." I wanted to apologize, but she had already locked herself in her room, shutting the door. I just wanted to step back, but she must have thought too much, thinking I was bullying her. I didn't pay her any more attention. I took off my wet clothes, washed up, tested the water heater, and then left the bathroom. When I got to the living room, I saw her bedroom door, which had been closed, was now slightly ajar. I wasn't sure when it happened, but there was a big gap left. I walked over, wanting to knock on the door and explain, but I accidentally caught a glimpse of what was inside her room. My hand, which had been reaching to knock, froze. At that moment, I really didn't dare go in. If I did, things would definitely get worse. I muttered pineapple honey and quickly opened the door to leave. When I tried to leave, I found the main door had been locked from the outside. Dong Juchi lived in a rental place, and once the latch was pushed from outside, no one inside could open the door. I desperately pulled on the door, but it wouldn't budge. I called my girlfriend, but her phone was off. I wanted to go into the room to find Dong Juchi, but I was afraid it would be misunderstood. I kept dialing my girlfriend's number, but unfortunately, it wouldn't go through. That night, Dong Juchi never came out, and I didn't dare enter her room. With so much noise, I couldn't believe she hadn't heard anything. She didn't come out on her own, and I didn't dare go in, so in the end, I had no choice but to lie down on the sofa. The next morning, when I woke up, I found a blanket had been placed over me at some point, but Dong Juchi was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't figure it out. How did she get out when the door was locked from the outside? When I got home, my girlfriend had already gone to work. That night, when she came home from work, I didn't report to her right away. That night, as we were going to bed, my girlfriend suddenly asked me if I thought her best friend was pretty. Not as pretty as my wife. I'm thinking of introducing her to some relatives. What do you think? Why not? It's a good idea. As soon as I said this, I regretted it. My girlfriend pinched my ear and asked, "So, you think she is good enough to be introduced to relatives? Come clean, do you like her?" No, absolutely not. I wasn't going to admit it, and I thought she wouldn't let me off so easily. But unexpectedly, she suddenly leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "If one day I'm gone, and you end up with her, I'll be okay with it." How could that be? We'll be together forever, we'll never separate. My girlfriend and I had a good relationship, and I didn't think too much about it. I just let it go. 3 days later, my wife's father suddenly got sick, so she rushed back to her hometown. I didn't expect that when I saw her again, we would already be separated by life and death. Every weekend before my girlfriend went back home, her best friend would come to my house for dinner. Even after my girlfriend went back home, nothing changed. With just the two of us at home, the same thing that happened in the bathroom occurred again, but neither of us spoke. The atmosphere was incredibly awkward. Her best friend also wanted to lighten the mood, but unfortunately, she was too cold and didn't know how to express herself. I had the ability to turn the atmosphere around, and I knew how to make this woman smile broadly, showing all her teeth. But I didn't dare. I was scared. I was scared it was a test from my girlfriend, and I was also scared that I wouldn't be able to hold back and might embrace her recklessly. It had been almost a month since I interacted with my wife. Now, a beautiful woman with both looks and a great figure was right in front of me. The most important thing was that I believed she wouldn't refuse. As long as I took action, she wouldn't be able to escape. Because, after all, I had once. And she had pushed me away. However, such things were too dangerous. I didn't dare try it easily. If I did, my wife would definitely divorce me. Whether it's a man or a woman, once they cheat, they will cheat again and again. Facing this beautiful woman, it was incredibly difficult for me to resist, and I hoped she would leave soon. But her best friend didn't want to leave. After dinner, she very actively offered to help wash the dishes. She had helped wash dishes before, but it was different this time. Today, she was wearing a tight black skirt, perfectly outlining her body curves, displaying both elegance and sensual charm. Her waist was so slender it was almost frightening, so small that it could hardly be described. When she bent over to wash the dishes, her full hips were perfectly showcased, alluring and tempting. The more I looked, the harder it was for me to control myself. Luckily, after washing the dishes, she left, and I had another sleepless night. In my mind, I kept thinking about how she bent over while washing the dishes and what happened last time in the bathroom. The next day, I went to work with dark circles under my eyes. After work, it was another night of overthinking. The second weekend after my girlfriend went home, I came back from socializing a bit late. I had just taken off my clothes and laid down in bed when I heard the sound of keys turning outside. I really wanted to roll over and check if my girlfriend had returned, but I had drunk a little and couldn't move. Slowly, I remembered that before drinking, I was chatting with her. She was still at her hometown, so it couldn't be her. I must have been thinking about her because we hadn't seen each other for so long. Shaking my head, I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. But soon, in my dream, I heard the sound of keys turning again. This time, the sound was much clearer, as if someone was opening my room door. The door opened, and in the dim light, I saw my wife tiptoe into the room. In the dream, I saw my girlfriend wearing a white lace nightgown, barefoot, walking step by step from the door to the bed. Each step felt light and graceful. Her legs were smooth, presenting an image of elegance and sensuality. After entering the room, she walked over to the side of the bed. I didn't wait for her to get into bed but instead waited for her to lift my blanket. Still waiting for her to take the initiative, I didn't open my eyes. After a while, my girlfriend really climbed onto the bed, grabbed my shoulder, and shook me desperately. I still didn't open my eyes. Instead, I stretched out my arms and hugged her tightly. My girlfriend's strength was a bit weak, and I held her firmly in my arms. I kissed her passionately, pulling her closer, wanting to press her into me. When I pried her lips open with my tongue, she bit me, and it hurt so much that I had to let go immediately. After I released her, she climbed off the bed and ran out. She must have hurt herself from the bite, and that's when I woke up from the dream. I opened my eyes and realized my back was drenched in sweat. It was just a nightmare. I don't know how much time had passed when I heard the sound of crying. Woo! 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 At first, I thought it was still part of the nightmare, but the crying didn't stop. I slowly opened my eyes and realized there was someone crying in the living room, and their voice sounded familiar. I walked out of the room into the hall, and I saw Donjuchi, crying while holding her phone. Donjuchi. I couldn't help but call her name. The woman didn't respond. She just cried while looking at her phone, covering her mouth to stop herself from sobbing out loud. When I saw the silhouette on the screen, I realized she was video chatting with someone. In that moment, I was confused. Woo! 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 Big sister. Just as I was about to walk over and ask her what was going on, I heard her shout, "Big sister." That was when I finally came to my senses. My girlfriend was 3 years older than Donjuchi. All this time, she had always called my girlfriend Big Sister. At midnight, Donjuchi was video chatting with my girlfriend and crying. It was really concerning. I ran over and saw the person on the screen was indeed my girlfriend. She was wearing a white hospital gown, with an oxygen mask on her face, looking very pale. The monitoring equipment behind her was constantly beeping. When my girlfriend saw me, she tried to raise her hand, but unfortunately, she didn't have the strength, and it moved very slowly. She smiled at me through the screen, her mouth slightly open, but too weak to close it. The monitoring equipment emitted a loud alarm, and her hand, which hadn't been raised yet, fell back down. Her eyes slowly closed. Xiaoli. Although I didn't know what had happened, I knew my girlfriend was in danger. The door to the hospital room was pushed open, and a doctor and a nurse rushed in. Quick! Prepare the defibrillator and adrenaline. Perform CPR immediately. The doctor had barely finished speaking when a nurse hurriedly ran in with the equipment. The doctor was busy performing CPR, while the nurse assisted. Someone accidentally knocked into the table, and the phone on the table fell, causing the video to cut off. I quickly got dressed and ran out of the room to the garage. Just as I started the car, Donjuchi ran over and opened the car door. She pushed me into the passenger seat and jumped into the driver's seat. My heart was in chaos, but I hadn't lost my mind and knew I couldn't drive in this state. The woman rushed out with her clothes slightly disheveled. Looking at her, I felt very conflicted, with so many questions I wanted to ask. I didn't want to affect her driving, so I kept them to myself. Donjuchi drove pretty fast. A 500-kilometer journey was completed in just 5 hours. We arrived at the hospital, but by the time we got there, my girlfriend had already left me forever. I knelt in front of her, crying like a child. I was a complete scumbag, and I had wronged her. After handling my girlfriend's affairs, Donjuchi took out a phone and gave it to me before leaving. I opened the phone, and inside were videos my girlfriend had recorded. Aji, please forgive me for leaving without saying goodbye. Don't cry, don't be sad, and don't feel sorry for me. In this life, I'm really happy to be with you. I am so grateful for how much you loved me, took care of me, and tolerated me. The days we spent together made me so happy. Actually, there's a hereditary disease in my maternal family, and every generation passes it on to one of the daughters. Both my grandmother and mother died before they were 30 because of this disease. The cause was unknown, and there was no cure. It wasn't until their lives ended that the true nature of the illness was discovered. I know that it's hard for me to avoid it as well, so I haven't married you or had children. I want to end this hereditary disease in my generation. Please forgive my selfishness for not telling you the truth and for not being able to continue with you. When I found out that my life was coming to an end, the person I was most worried about was still Dong Juchi. I'm sorry for deceiving your feelings and for asking you to do this for me. You are so excellent, and I know that many women will be by your side in the future. I know you might not love me anymore, but please think about your parents. And please don't blame Juchi. Everything was my arrangement. I really feel sorry for her, for forcing her to do something that went against her heart. In the future, you'll have to make it up to her. She has a great character and personality, but unfortunately, she was born into the wrong family. Her parents are extremely patriarchal. Since she was young, she had endless farm work to do. She had to wake up at 6 a.m. and couldn't rest until 11 p.m. When Juchi finished junior high, her parents made her quit school to work. She only kept 300 yuan for herself every month, and the rest had to be sent back home. If there was even a little less, her parents would call and scold her. One time, when there were more holidays at work, she sent all the money home, but her mother still called to ask for more. It's heartbreaking to see. Since she was little, Juchi had doubts about whether she was really her parents' biological child. I also suspect that it's impossible for there to be such a cruel mother in this world. Actually, my grandmother was also very patriarchal. When my mother was young, her health wasn't very good. After giving birth to me, she didn't want to have more children. But my grandmother kept insisting that she should have a son, so my mother reluctantly had another child. In the end, it was still a girl. After my younger sister was born, my mother's health worsened. It seemed like my grandmother couldn't see that, and she still wanted my mother to have a third child. My mother firmly disagreed. One day, my grandmother took my 1-year-old sister out shopping and accidentally lost her. My mother was so angry that she took me back to her family's house, and only came back when my grandmother became too old to move. The first time I saw Juchi, I immediately knew she must be my sister. That day, I took time off to take her to the hospital for a DNA test. Juchi secretly went to get the DNA results and came back, shaking her head. She didn't show them to me. I didn't ask her any more questions. Even if we weren't real sisters, I treated her like one. I knew that she had already lost hope in her biological parents. Even if she knew the truth, it wouldn't heal the scars from her childhood. 3 months ago, her brother found a wife, and the bride's family wanted 50,000 in dowry. Juchi's parents couldn't afford that amount, so they decided to marry her off to the brother of the woman. The man was already over 40. If Juchi married him, her life would be ruined. 50,000 isn't much for you, but what matters is that I can tell she truly likes you. She's never dared to express her true feelings, probably because she knows you only have me in your heart, and there is no room for anyone else. Now that I'm gone, I can be at peace knowing Juchi is with you. Aji, please promise me, even if this is my last wish. After watching the video my girlfriend made before she passed, my tears soaked my shirt. I locked myself in my room for 7 days, still not believing that my wife was gone. Thinking about my girlfriend's last wish, I called Dong Juchi. I'm sorry, the number you've dialed is turned off. That foolish woman, where could she have gone? Finally, I found out from my younger uncle that after giving me the phone, she went to the train station. At the time, it was my younger uncle who rode his motorcycle to take her there. My younger uncle also saw her buy a ticket to Kunming and sent her to the train before leaving. I called my girlfriend's company and got Dong Juchi's address from there, then bought a plane ticket to Kunming. Kunming is a very beautiful place, with purple jacaranda trees and Panlong River blending perfectly with the cityscape, making it especially stunning. I wasn't in the mood to enjoy the scenery, though, and took a taxi all night to Juchi's hometown. The 300 kilometers trip cost me 800 yuan, and after traveling for 6 hours along the bumpy mountain roads, I realized I had unfairly overcharged the driver. When I arrived at Dong Juchi's house, she wasn't there. There were a group of people sitting in the living room, with 2 bottles of Moutai and some supplements and seafood on the table. When they learned I was looking for Dong Juchi, a man in his 40s stood up. His face was full of uneven muscles, one side was thin while the other side was fat, making him look quite terrifying. He gave me a hostile look, his eyes filled with disgust and wariness. Without asking, I could tell this man was the one trying to marry Dong Juchi, the toad who thought he could marry her. This must be Dong Juchi's father. I'm her man, and I'm here to propose today. I ignored him and walked up to an elderly person, cutting to the chase and saying what I came for. Who are you? I'm Juchi's husband. To save this foolish woman, I had to pretend to be her husband. Yeah, who's this guy? How can he just show up and claim to be Chi-Chi's man? Chi-Chi looks so innocent. I didn't expect her to already have a man. The people in the room started discussing among themselves. At that moment, a door opened suddenly. What are you doing here? If I don't come, are you planning to marry someone else? You're really such a fool. You already have a man and still lied to me about marrying you? So marrying me was a lie, and you really want my sister to marry your brother? You bitch. You. When I saw someone not only insult my woman but also try to hit her, I quickly stepped in front of her and slapped him. The toad, not only ugly but also physically drained, had no strength. With one slap, he fell to the ground and couldn't get up. If not for others blocking me, I might have stomped on him a few times. He's ugly, and yet he dares to insult others. I certainly wasn't happy, but I couldn't make an example of him, otherwise I'd be the one stuck in an empty house forever. I didn't argue with the elderly people, just stepped aside. Not long after, the neighborhood committee members arrived. It seemed Dong Juchi was worried I'd be surrounded by her family, so she called the police. Dong Juchi's parents arranged her marriage, but she and I truly loved each other. In the end, they couldn't do anything to stop us. I directly stated my intention, offering 300,000 yuan in dowry to marry Dong Juchi. When her mother heard this, she secretly smiled, but then she put on a serious face and insisted on 500,000 yuan. I didn't immediately agree and looked at Dong Juchi. When I saw her nod, I took out the money. With the neighborhood committee members as witnesses, I got the marriage certificate with Dong Juchi and even had her household registration transferred. When we got home, neither I nor Dong Juchi brought up my girlfriend. Because she will forever live in our hearts.